For nearly 20 years, one man stood quietly behind King Charles, shaping almost every major decision that came out of Buckingham Palace. He helped guide Charles through the death of his mother. He helped steady the monarchy through scandal, through succession, through the most painful family rupture in a generation. And insiders say he was the single biggest obstacle standing between Prince Harry and any real chance of reconciliation with his father. Now, that man is gone. And according to one of the best-connected royal commentators in Britain, his departure has just quietly reopened a door that many thought had been sealed shut forever. A door back into the royal fold, for Harry, and for Meghan. This is the story of Sir Clive Alderton, the King's most trusted gatekeeper, and why his exit might be the beginning of something nobody saw coming. If you followed the royal family for any length of time, you'll know that behind every king, every queen, every working royal, there is a private secretary. Not a household name. Not someone whose face you'd recognize on the street. But someone who, in practice, wields extraordinary influence, deciding who gets access to the monarch, what messages get through, what battles are worth fighting, and which ones are best left alone. For the last 2 decades, that role. For Charles, both as Prince of Wales and later as King, belonged to a man named Sir Clive Alderton. This week, Buckingham Palace confirmed what royal insiders had been quietly speculating about for months: Sir Clive is stepping down. He'll formally leave his position as the King and Queen's principal private secretary next year, timed almost symbolically with his 60th birthday. On the surface, this looks like a routine, even graceful, transition. A long-serving aide moving on after a distinguished career. But scratch beneath that surface, and royal watchers are telling a very different story. Because Sir Clive wasn't just any aide. He was, by most accounts, the most powerful unelected figure in the modern monarchy, and one of the fiercest defenders of the wall that has kept Prince Harry and Meghan Markle at arm's length from the royal family for years. So when a departure like this happens, the question isn't just who replaces him. It's this: does the wall he helped build start to crumble now that he's no longer the one guarding it? To understand why Sir Clive Alderton's exit matters so much, you have to understand who he was to King Charles, and just how long that relationship goes back. Clive Alderton wasn't a royal insider by birth. He was a career diplomat, the kind of steady, disciplined professional the Foreign Office quietly produces by the dozen. Sharp, discreet, and built for a life in the background rather than the spotlight. He joined the Foreign and Commonwealth Office back in 1986, working his way up through the diplomatic ranks over the following 2 decades. Then, in 2006, just a year after Charles married Camilla, Alderton crossed over from government service into royal service, joining the newly formed household of the Prince and Duchess of Cornwall as their deputy private secretary. It was the beginning of an extraordinarily close professional partnership. Within 3 years, he'd been promoted again, this time to Private Secretary for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, effectively becoming Charles's right-hand man on the world stage. Accompanying him on state visits, shaping his public image abroad, managing the delicate diplomacy that comes with being heir to the throne. But Alderton didn't stay in that seat forever. In 2012, he stepped away from the royal household altogether, taking up a post as the United Kingdom's ambassador to Morocco. For 3 years, he represented Britain on foreign soil, real, hands-on diplomatic work, far from the palace corridors. And then, in a move that would prove pivotal for the future of the monarchy, he came back. He returned to Charles and Camilla's side as their principal aide, and this time, he would stay through the most consequential period of Charles's life, the final years as heir, the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the accession to the throne, and the early, uncertain years of a new reign. By the time Charles became king in 2022, Clive Alderton wasn't just an aide anymore. He was, by nearly every account from those close to the palace, one of the most trusted and influential figures in the entire royal operation, a man who understood Charles's instincts almost as well as Charles understood them himself. And it's precisely because of that closeness, that influence, that trust, that his role in one particular chapter of royal history became so significant. A chapter that involves 2 names most people watching this already know very well: Harry and Meghan. Let's rewind to January 2020. It's a cold winter day at Sandringham, the Queen's private Norfolk estate, the same house where the royal family traditionally gathers every Christmas. But this particular meeting isn't festive. It's urgent. It's tense. It will later become known simply as the Sandringham Summit. Inside, the late Queen Elizabeth II sits down with her son and heir, Prince Charles, her grandson and second in line, Prince William, and Prince Harry, dialing in from Canada, where he and Meghan had quietly relocated weeks earlier. The topic on the table is nothing less than the future of the Sussexes within the monarchy. Just days before, Harry and Meghan had shocked the world and reportedly blindsided the palace by announcing on social media that they intended to step back as senior royals and become financially independent. No warning. No prior sign-off from the Queen. The announcement had detonated like a bomb across British media, and now the family needed to figure out, urgently, what came next. What emerged from that summit was a carefully worded statement from the Queen, one that walked a delicate line between preserving family unity and accepting the reality that Harry and Meghan wanted out of the traditional royal structure. It sanctioned what would later be dubbed Megxit, Harry and Meghan stepping away from full-time royal duties to build what the palace euphemistically called an independent life. And according to royal insiders, it was Clive Alderton, working alongside other senior aides, who took the emotionally charged outcome of that summit and turned it into workable reality. He was one of the key architects in the room finalizing the terms of the Sussexes' departure, what titles they could keep, what patronages they'd give up, how the transition would actually function in practice. Think about what that means. The very first framework of the Sussexes' exit from royal life. The terms that still, to this day, shape their relationship with the family, passed through Clive Alderton's hands. From that point forward, his role only deepened. As Charles prepared for the throne in the final years of Elizabeth's reign, Alderton became increasingly central to managing not just the mechanics of monarchy, but the mechanics of family, including the increasingly public and increasingly painful rift with Harry. And here's where royal commentators say his real significance comes into focus. Because in the years since Megxit, there have been multiple moments where reconciliation between Harry and his father seemed, briefly, within reach. Quiet meetings. Private conversations. Even, as many will remember, a widely reported brief visit between Harry and King Charles in 2024, when Harry flew to London after Charles's cancer diagnosis became public. But according to those who've watched the palace closely, every time a thaw seemed possible, there was a steadying, some would say restraining, hand nearby. And that hand, more often than not, belonged to Clive Alderton. Royal commentator Dan Wootton, speaking on Megyn Kelly's show, put it bluntly. He described Alderton as someone who spent years trying to protect King Charles from his own instincts. Instincts that, left unchecked, might have led Charles toward a warmer, faster reconciliation with his younger son. In Wootton's telling, Alderton wasn't just managing the king's schedule. He was managing the king's heart, at least when it came to Harry, carefully, deliberately keeping the door only ever cracked open, never fully unlocked. Whether that's entirely fair to Alderton is, of course, up for debate, and we'll get into the pushback on that theory shortly. But it's a theory that's gained real traction among royal watchers, precisely because of how consistently the pattern seemed to repeat: warmth from Charles, caution from his inner circle. So when Buckingham Palace announced this week that Alderton would be stepping down, with his official statement expressing gratitude for the honor of serving through such historic times, and a promise that his support for the King and Queen would continue in a less formal way going forward, it wasn't just a staffing update. For royal watchers who've spent years tracking the slow, painful, on-again off-again story of Harry's relationship with the Crown, it read like the removal of a very specific obstacle. The moment the news broke, royal commentary shows and tabloid front pages lit up with speculation. Some outlets framed it as exactly what the palace said it was: a dignified, well-earned retirement for a loyal servant of the Crown, timed neatly around his 60th birthday, with an amicable handover to a successor still to be named. But others, particularly voices who've spent years covering the Sussex saga, read it very differently. On social media, royal commentary accounts began connecting dots almost immediately. Alderton's fingerprints on the original Megxit terms, his reputation as a fierce protector of institutional interests, his closeness to Charles during every major Harry-related decision of the last several years. Dan Wootton's comments on the Meghan Kelly show quickly circulated across YouTube and social platforms, amplifying a theory that was already bubbling under the surface. That with the King's most protective aide stepping aside, the practical, human obstacles to a Harry reconciliation had just gotten smaller. Now, it's worth pausing here for some balance, because not everyone buys this theory, and it's important we don't present speculation as settled fact. Other royal commentators have pushed back, arguing that palace departures like this happen for far more mundane reasons than secret family diplomacy. Alderton is turning 60. He's spent the better part of 2 decades in an extraordinarily demanding, high-pressure role. People retire. Careers end. And even if he does step back from the formal title, the palace's own statement made clear he isn't disappearing entirely. He'll continue supporting the King and Queen in an informal capacity, meaning his influence may not vanish overnight, even if his day-to-day title does. There's also a simpler explanation floating around royal circles. That this may be less about Harry at all, and more about King Charles quietly reshuffling his inner circle as he continues adapting to life on the throne, nearly 4 years into his reign, refreshing his team the way any long-serving leader eventually does. Still, in the world of royal reporting, timing matters. And the timing of this announcement, arriving amid ongoing, if painfully slow, signs of a possible thaw between Harry and the family, has been enough to fuel weeks of speculation that likely won't quiet down anytime soon. To really understand why this story has captured so much attention, it helps to step back and look at how the machinery of the monarchy actually works. The king doesn't operate alone. Every modern monarch is surrounded by a small, tightly knit team of private secretaries and senior aides who essentially function as gatekeepers, filtering information, managing relationships, protecting the institution from decisions made in the heat of emotion. It's a system built, quite deliberately, to prioritize stability over sentiment. That system served the monarchy well through centuries of crises. But it also means that even a king, even the head of state himself, doesn't always get to simply follow his own heart when it comes to sensitive family matters. Every potential reconciliation with Harry isn't just a personal decision for Charles. It's treated, internally, as an institutional one. Weighed against optics, precedent, security arrangements, media strategy, and the feelings of other family members, particularly Prince William, whose own relationship with his brother remains, by most accounts, deeply strained. Aides like Clive Alderton exist precisely to manage that complexity. Their job isn't to be cruel or vindictive, it's to protect the institution, sometimes even from the instincts of the monarch they serve. And when a king who is, by his wife's own description, a relentless workaholic driven by strong personal instincts is paired with a fiercely protective, institutionally minded private secretary, tension between heart and strategy becomes almost inevitable. That's the lens through which royal commentators are viewing Alderton's exit. Not as one man arbitrarily blocking a father from his son, but as a symbol of the broader institutional caution that has, for years, slowed any potential path back to the fold for Harry and Meghan. Remove that particular aide from the equation, the theory goes, and even if the same institutional caution remains embedded in the palace machine more broadly, the specific, deeply experienced hand that helped write the original terms of the Sussexes' departure is no longer the one managing the next chapter. Sir Clive's departure also arrives at a broader inflection point for the monarchy. He was knighted back in 2022 under the Royal Victorian Order, an honour granted directly by the sovereign, not through government channels, reserved specifically for those who've served the monarch or royal family in a deeply personal capacity. It was, in many ways, the crowning recognition of just how central he'd become. Now, as he prepares to hand over to a still unnamed successor, the palace faces a genuine moment of transition, not just administratively, but symbolically. The new principal private secretary will inherit not just a job description, but an extraordinarily delicate, closely watched family situation that has captivated global headlines for the better part of 6 years. So where does that leave things right now? As of this announcement, Sir Clive Alderton remains in his post for the time being. His formal departure isn't immediate, it's expected to take effect next year, coinciding with his 60th birthday in May. Until then, the palace says he'll continue his current duties while also helping ease the transition for whoever is chosen as his successor. No name has yet been confirmed for who will take over the role. That decision alone will be closely watched by royal commentators, because whoever steps into Alderton's shoes will inherit not just the day-to-day running of the King and Queen's office, but also, whether they want it or not, a front-row seat to whatever happens next in the Harry and Meghan story. Meanwhile, there's been no official palace comment connecting Alderton's departure to the Sussexes in any way. The statement released this week focused entirely on gratitude for his service and confidence in a smooth handover, nothing more, nothing less. Any link to Harry and Meghan, at this stage, remains firmly in the realm of commentary and speculation, not confirmed palace strategy. Still, the broader context can't be ignored. Relations between Harry and the royal family remain fragile. Public appearances together are rare. Trust, by most accounts from both sides, remains difficult to rebuild after years of public statements, interviews, and legal disputes over security arrangements. A single staffing change, even a significant one, isn't likely to undo years of accumulated distance overnight. But in the slow-moving, carefully choreographed world of royal diplomacy, sometimes the biggest shifts don't come from grand gestures. They come quietly. From a changing of the guard behind palace doors, where the next chapter of this very public family story may already be starting to take shape. For nearly 2 decades, Sir Clive Alderton was one of the most powerful, least visible figures in the modern British monarchy, a steady hand who helped guide Charles from heir to king, and who, in the process, became closely associated with the walls that have kept Prince Harry at a distance since Megxit first fractured the family back in 2020. Now, as he prepares to step away, royal commentators are asking a question that, until recently, would have seemed almost unthinkable. Could his exit be the moment that finally softens those walls? The palace insists this is simply a graceful retirement, a loyal servant, stepping back after historic years of service, with his support for the King and Queen continuing quietly behind the scenes. And that may well be exactly what it is. But in a family, and an institution, where every decision carries symbolic weight, the departure of the man once described as trying to save the king from his own instincts feels, to many watching closely, like it could be about far more than just a staffing change. Whether this truly opens a door for Harry and Meghan, or whether it's simply one aide handing the baton to another within an institution that will remain cautious no matter who holds the title, only time, and whatever happens next inside those palace walls, will tell. So, what do you think? Is this really the beginning of a path back for Harry and Meghan, or is the palace's official explanation the full story, nothing more? Let me know your take in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm genuinely curious where you land on this. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the inner workings of royal life, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is far from over, and when the next development breaks, you'll want to be the first to know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.